Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the start of another reading vlog. There's 6 books in particular that I am the most excited about coming out this month, so I knew I wanted to do some kind of reading vlog centered around those books. I'm still not 100% sure how I want to film this reading vlog. Since there's 6 books, I might break it up into 2 parts and do a part 1 reading half of the books this month and then part 2 reading the other half in May, or I just might make it one long continuous vlog reading all of the books for however long it takes me to read them all. Still not sure, but currently it is April 10th, so 3 out of the 6 books that I was anticipating have been released. On April 2nd, Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez and The Rule Book by Sarah Adams came out. I pre-ordered both of them. They're literally still in the box and I haven't opened it yet. The thing with both of those books is, with The Rule Book, I just read a Sarah Adams book at the end of March, so I'm kind of not in the mood to read another Sarah Adams right now, so I might push reading that one back a bit. And the Abby Jimenez book, Just for the Summer, is probably my #1 most highly anticipated book, the one that I'm the most excited about of these 6 books. And I'm in a bit of a reading slump right now, so I just don't want my reading slump to kind of affect how I feel towards that book in any way. That's a 5-star prediction for me, so I just don't want my reading mood to hinder my enjoyment of that book at all. And with it being a very summary type of book, just based on the cover and the title, I feel like I kind of want to push that one back a little bit too. But yesterday, Wild Love by Elsie Silver came out, and that is one that I'm very much in the mood for. I don't know what it is, but I'm just really feeling cowboy romances lately. I'm very much in like a country mood. I'm going to Nashville in a few weeks, so I feel like I'm just getting hyped up for my trip. And I know Wild Love isn't specifically a cowboy romance, but it is the start to the spin-off series of the Chestnut Springs series, so I feel like since it takes place in the same universe, it's gonna give the same energy, the same vibes, so I'm very much in the mood to read that book. So that's the one we're gonna start the vlog with. I really don't know too many details about what Wild Love is about, other than we're following Ford Grant, who is the brother of Willa Grant from Chestnut Springs, and Willa's book was by far my very favorite of the Chestnut Springs series, so I'm hoping that means good things for this book and how I'm gonna feel about Ford's character. Like I said, I definitely don't think this is like cowboy romance, because I know Ford does something with the music industry. What we saw of him in the last book of the Chestnut Springs series, his little cameo, he like ran a nightclub, I think, so something to do with like the entertainment industry. I'm sure we'll find out all the details once I get into reading Wild Love, but I'm gonna start it and give you guys my spoiler-free thoughts along the way. So I am 15% into Wild Love, and to be honest, it is a very slow start and I'm not super into it yet. And I feel like I keep comparing it to the Chestnut Springs series because that's all I have to go off of, but I do feel like with the Chestnut Springs books, something would happen at the beginning of each of those books that really hooked you and pulled you in right away, and this book just doesn't have that yet. It's very slow. I feel like it's gonna be a slow burn as well. So we have Ford Grant. I didn't know what his profession was, but he does work in the music industry, and he has moved back to Rose Hill to set up his own record label. He's very successful in the music industry. He's a billionaire, so it's gonna be billionaire romance, and it's also single dad because he just found out he is a father as well, which I kind of don't want to say how that trope came about, but that is one of the tropes in here. And then our female main character, Rosie, is also coming back to Rose Hill. She had an incident at work and had to leave, so she's coming back to crash with her older brother Wes, so it's also brother's best friend trope because Ford is Wes's best friend. So lots of different tropes, but it is very slow to start. I feel like we're just getting crumbs. We know that there's kind of this history between Rosie and Ford, but we don't really know what happened between them. I feel like Chestnut Springs did kind of give us a bit more when we would be in the characters' heads. Even very early on, it felt like there was a connection because you knew in their heads that they liked one another, but we're not even getting that in this book, so I don't really know how the characters feel towards one another. Hi guys, I'm over halfway through Wild Love and I'm coming at you with some mixed feelings on the book so far. Right now I'm feeling pretty frustrated, and I think the main source of my frustration is I can't wrap my head around what the character's dynamic is supposed to be and what their relationship is supposed to be. I feel like they're confused on how they feel. They keep going back and forth. They're very wishy-washy, so it's leaving me feeling very confused. But I think they're supposed to be frenemies, which to me was not made explicitly clear. I kind of only found that out when I was reading through some Goodreads reviews, because they'll say they hate one another and then they're like, oh, it's just a front because we really like one another. Then they kind of go back and forth on that. And so I'm like, I feel like you guys don't really hate one another, but I also don't really feel like you like one another that much either. But at the same time, there is chemistry between them, and I do feel like there is a connection. So I'm just super confused on that. And then another thing that really frustrated me is this plot hole that came up, which I'm not going to give a whole bunch away, but basically early on in the book there is this scene, and it's a pretty pivotal moment that comes up several times throughout the book. And it starts with Rosie asking Ford if he's single, and he very clearly says yes, and then it leads to this moment. And then much later on in the book, Rosie is like, yeah, Ford still hasn't told me whether or not he's single. And I'm like, girl, yes he did. He very clearly said yes, because it started this whole thing. And then I went back to look to make sure I wasn't wrong, and then it's spelled out clear as day, Ford saying yes, I'm single. So I'm just kind of confused, like how that got overlooked, why that happened. I don't know. I'm hoping something happens in the end that's gonna kind of resolve all these issues I'm having and tie up all the loose ends, answer my questions, but we'll see. Hi guys, I finished Wild Love and I needed some time to just kind of sit with my thoughts, because I think when I last updated y'all, I had some mixed feelings and I was just kind of confused about some parts, and I still kind of feel that way. I do feel like the characters were kind of giving conflicting emotions. I feel like they didn't know how they felt about one another, so it made me very confused. I feel like the ending did kind of tie up some loose ends and brought things together. There was a little conflict at the end, which I don't want to say was a third act breakup because it didn't really escalate that much, but I thought it was really well done, and I did really like the ending a lot. It was more so the middle of the book that I struggled with, and like the build-up of their relationship. I don't know, they weren't my favorite as a couple, but even more so, I don't think I liked their characters that much individually. Not that I disliked them. I feel like I just didn't have super strong feelings either way, and I was trying to think about descriptive words or characteristics I would use to describe them as a couple and individually, and I just couldn't really think of anything. I feel like, I don't want to say they were bland, but I just didn't really have strong feelings about them one way or the other. And I kind of feel that way about this book in general. I don't know, I feel like this book didn't really get me super excited for this new series. I feel like I couldn't visually picture a lot of things, like the setting, the way I could Chestnut Springs, and it gave me all those country vibes. This one I didn't as much feel that, and I feel like even the side characters in Chestnut Springs, they're so strong that they make you super excited for their books, and this book definitely set up who book 2 is gonna follow, and I didn't feel super excited necessarily one way or the other about this character's book. I feel like I'm coming off as negative, but there were things I did like about the book. I did like elements of the story. I did like how the single dad trope was done. The first spicy scene in this book was so good, so well written. Honestly, probably like top 3 spicy scenes I've ever read. I'm gonna think about it every single day. I love Elsie Silver. I love her writing. Something about her writing style just like really clicks with my brain. I just think this book in particular, like the characters, their dynamic as a couple, and maybe this new world is just gonna take some getting used to, and I just didn't have that strong of feelings and didn't feel that connected. But I have settled on a 3.75 star rating, which I feel like is a little bit lower than how most people have been rating this book, and I do feel a little bit disappointed just because I know at the beginning I talked about how Ford is Willa Grant's brother, and Willa's book was my favorite of the Chestnut Springs series, so I had kind of high hopes and expectations. But again, thinking back on Chestnut Springs, book 1 wasn't my favorite. I rated it 3.5 stars initially, probably would bump it up to 4 now, but I went on to love the other books so much more, so I'm hoping that's the case with this series. I love Elsie Silver, I really and truly do. I will read everything that she writes. I think maybe this one just didn't hit the way I thought it would, but it was still good, still things I liked about it. I'm not trying to come off super negative, but those are just my honest thoughts and opinions on Wild Love. I'm not sure what book I'm going to pick up next for this video yet, but I will talk to you guys when I have decided. I am so very excited for this next new release, which is Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. I say this every time I talk about her and her books, but I have listened to all of them on audio. She uses the same named like 2 or 3 narrators for all of her books, and they are all so good because they're all Australian. So for me, it just makes it so much more immersive and so entertaining. I just love how her audiobooks are done. So I'm listening to this one on audio. I was also especially excited for Darling Girls because my favorite Sally book is The Good Sister, mostly because I loved the sister relationship in that book so much. So when I heard that Darling Girls was also going to be following sister relationships, I was very excited and very highly anticipating it. And so far I am really enjoying it. We do get all 3 perspectives of these 3 foster sisters, and they're all very unique. They're all very distinctive from one another, so I don't get any perspectives confused. We also get past and present timelines. So in the past, we're seeing how they all ended up at this foster home together and under the care of the same foster mother. And then in the present, something is being uncovered that's drawing all 3 women back to this foster home. So far, I'm very interested in the story. I am so curious to see everything that went down at this foster home. There's also not one perspective that I'm preferring over the others. I'm liking them all equally. So sometimes I know in books you're kind of like ready to get through one person's point of view to get to the next set of chapters, but usually in all of Sally Hepworth's books, I feel like I like all the point of views the same amount, and this one is no different. So thoroughly enjoying it so far. It's already hooked me. I'm already invested, and I can't wait to keep listening. I feel like I'm gonna finish this really quickly in like 1 or 2 sittings. So I'll try to update you guys as something new happens or as I have new thoughts and opinions on the book.
To live there from 12 to 13. I thought we were introducing ourselves.
There's one POV that we're getting in here from one sister that has me so confused because the stuff that's happening with them in the past isn't matching up with what's happening in the present. So I'm like, okay, there's clearly some part of the picture that we're not getting. There's some missing link that's gonna tie the past to the present, or this person is lying about something. So I'm very anxious to see how that's gonna play out. Other than that, I'm thoroughly enjoying my time listening to this one. It is so well paced. There's not been one single second of this book where I've been bored. I feel like Sally Hepworth does such a good job at putting little details and side characters in at the perfect moments. She does everything so purposefully, I feel. like sometimes when I'm reading thrillers, I get kind of exhausted and my brain will start to hurt because I find myself playing detective along with the characters and I'm like trying to keep track of everything. But I feel like when I'm reading a Sally book, I can just sit back and enjoy the ride and trust that it's in good hands and that she is gonna give us the right amount of information at the times that we need it. I feel like the things that we're meant to know, she gives us enough detail on up front, but then the things that she's throwing in that she wants us to kind of forget along the way because they might come up later as part of a big reveal, I feel like she's doing that very intentionally too. So I'm having such a good time with this one. I don't think I'm loving it quite as much as my 2 favorite Sally Hepworth books, which are The Good Sister and then The Mother-in-Law. I don't think anything will happen that'll make this a 5-star, but if the ending and the twist is really good, I definitely think it could be a 4.5. Right now it's probably feeling like at the 4-star range, so somewhere in the middle in terms of like ranking it along with how I feel about her other books, but I am really enjoying it. I finished Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth and I thought it was really good. It was very well paced. There wasn't a single moment in the book where I was losing interest or bored. It kept my attention the whole time. I thought the story was so captivating. Characters were very interesting and there wasn't a single perspective that I disliked. I liked them all the same, and I thought both the past and present timelines were equally interesting. I audibly gasped at several of the reveals. I was not expecting the twist. That being said though, I don't think this is my favorite Sally Hepworth book ever. Like I still prefer The Mother-in-Law and The Good Sister over this one, but that being said, I would still highly recommend this book. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. It's somewhere in the middle with how I feel about her other books. I probably like it about the same as The Family Next Door, a little more than The Younger Wife and The Soulmate, but a little less than The Mother-in-Law and The Good Sister. So really good, highly recommend it. I think it would be a good place to start too if you're looking to get into Sally Hepworth and her books. I feel like I did learn a lot about the foster care system too when I was reading it, so really well done, really enjoyed it and would really recommend it. Next, I am so excited to jump into this next new release, Funny Story by Emily Henry. I have so much FOMO because everyone is reading this right now and I cannot wait to get started. So I have a whole Emily Henry spiel, which if you've been here, you've probably heard this before, so I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I love hearing people's opinions on Emily Henry and her books and how they rank her books. So my Emily Henry spiel is that the very first contemporary romance I ever read when I was getting back into reading was People We Meet on Vacation. I love and adore that book so much. It has remained my favorite Emily Henry book. It's a 6-star read for me. I don't think she'll ever write a book that will top that one, but every time I pick up one of her books, I'm searching for the same feeling I got when I read it. Beach Read and Book Lovers for me are a little bit underneath that. I gave Beach Read 4.25 stars and Book Lovers 4.5 stars right after I read them, but I would like to do a reread of all her books because I feel like I've read so much between the time I read those and now that maybe my feelings and opinions have changed. I still have not read Happy Place, and the story with that is that each one of Emily Henry's books I bring on a vacation with me. So I associate each of her books with a different trip I've gone on, and Happy Place I brought with me last summer on the family trip we took. It ended up being a very busy, hectic sightseeing type of trip with like no downtime. When we were back in our hotel, I was either sleeping or getting ready for the next thing, so I didn't have any time to read, and so I just left it. I haven't picked it up since then. I'm kind of saving it for another trip I go on, but I want to read it at the perfect moment because I do just hold her books in such high regard, and I love my little tradition that I've kept up of reading all her books on trips. So the story with Funny Story is I'm going to Nashville this upcoming week, and this is the book I'm gonna bring with me, and I'm so excited. The plan is to start it a little bit before I go with the hopes that I'll be like in it and just so excited to pick it back up that when I do have downtime, instead of sleeping or just lazing around the hotel room, I'll want to pick up this book and read it. I'll hopefully read some on the plane. So very excited to jump into this. The premise sounds amazing. Hi guys, I've made a little bit of a dent in Funny Story. I feel like I've read enough to share my first impressions on the book, but I wanted to share the premise of this book first because I think it is so fun and so unique, and my camera cut off last time I was about to explain it. So just in case you haven't heard, in this book we're following Daphne and Miles, and they both get broken up with and their exes end up together. Their exes are like childhood friends who they swore there was nothing more between them, but apparently there was, because now they're together. So Daphne is essentially getting kicked out of the house that she shared with her ex-fiance. Miles's ex-girlfriend is moving in with Daphne's ex-fiance. So now Daphne needs a place to live. Miles needs a roommate. So Daphne is moving into Miles's apartment, and it becomes this fake dating trope because Miles and Daphne are trying to make it look like they've moved on. They're doing much better after going through these horrible breakups. And it's just so fun, so unique. I feel like fake dating is hit or miss for me depending on how the trope comes about, and in this book I think the trope came about perfectly. Fake dating, I feel like 99% of the time it's not very realistic, because when in real life do you ever hear about people fake dating for an extended period of time? I feel like it just doesn't happen, but in this case it just makes sense to me. I feel like it's kind of believable, and I'm just loving it. I love Daphne and Miles already. I love them individually. I love them together. The banter, as expected, with Emily Henry being the queen of banter, is so good. Literally every chapter has me laughing out loud already, and when I put this book down I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm like, when can I pick this book back up again, because I need to be back with these characters. I'm loving it. I'm getting butterflies. I can't wait for them to get together. I feel like people are already starting to finish this book, and I have seen some reviews. I've seen a lot of 5-star reviews, but I've also seen a few 3-star reviews, and the critiques I've seen people have of this book is mostly in relation to Miles and his character. I've heard people say that they just didn't find Miles attractive, they just didn't like his character, and I can't relate. I can't relate. I really like Miles, and one thing about Emily Henry that I love, she doesn't necessarily write the most beautiful, perfect, gorgeous, tall, muscly characters that are the most conventionally physically attractive, but they do feel so real and they do have great personalities, and I'm such a personality person. I feel like anytime I watch a dating show, the person that I like the most at the end and who I want them to pick is the person with the best personality, and it's not the person I initially liked, because you see their personality build up and shine through and you grow to love them. And that's kind of how Miles is. I feel like the more I'm getting to know him, the more I'm loving him, and he's becoming more attractive the more you see how funny he is and how he remembers little things about Daphne, and he's just so sweet and I love his character. I feel like this book feels very rom-com-y, like People We Meet on Vacation, but there's certain things in here, and Miles' character especially is reminding me of Gus from Beach Read. So I feel like this book is for the Beach Read girlies and the People We Meet on Vacation girlies, just so far with how much I've read. So all good things. I am really loving it. I'm eating it up. I'm gonna try to read a bit more today, and then I feel like the next time I update you guys will be when I'm back from my trip. So hopefully I get a good bit read on my trip as well, and I will chat with you guys when I have some more thoughts. I'm nearing the end. A funny story, I actually was able to read a good bit on my trip. I read the whole flight there and the whole flight back, so I did get a good ways through the book on my trip, which I am very happy about. I've been loving this book the whole way through. It has been feeling like a 5-star the whole time. I will say one thing I've noticed with Emily Henry and her books, and things I prefer in her books and things I don't like as much. I definitely prefer when her books are more rom-com-y, like People We Meet on Vacation was very rom-com-y. The romance was the focus and front and center for pretty much the whole book. This book I feel is also definitely more rom-com-y. The romance is front and center for the majority of the time. I think the things that took me out of the story in both Beach Read and Book Lovers, and the reason those books weren't 5 stars, is because the subplot was pretty heavy and it took the focus off the romance. Both Beach Read and Book Lovers had this deep familial subplot, and it kind of took me out of the story, and I wasn't as invested in these subplots as I was with the romance. And while I appreciate it adding depth and layers to the story and the characters, I just want to get back to the romance because I love the romance and I love the characters, and I want to read about their relationship more than their individual relationships and things going on in their lives. In Funny Story, the focus has now shifted to Daphne's relationship with her father, which I actually relate to a lot, but to be honest, it is kind of taking me out of it a little bit, and I'm just ready to get back to reading about Miles and Daphne and their relationship. This book has been feeling like a 5-star the whole way through, and I'm starting to feel like if we are focusing on Daphne and her father's relationship for too much longer and it doesn't somehow tie into the ending or move Daphne and Miles's relationship along, it might take away from my 5-star rating just a little bit, but I'm hoping that we kind of swiftly move on, not to be unsympathetic of Daphne because I do appreciate her having layers and depth as a character, but I just want the romance. I just want the love. I just want to have a fun, good time. And I'm kind of over the subplot, to be honest. So other than that, it has been feeling like a 5-star the whole way through, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it and loving it. I just much prefer when the book feels like a rom-com. So those are my thoughts so far. I'm going to read to the end, and next time I chat with you guys will be with my final thoughts and my final star rating. I finished Funny Story. I wanted to close out the video with my final thoughts. Last time I talked to you guys, the focus of the book had kind of shifted away from Daphne and Miles to Daphne and her father's relationship, and I usually don't love the familial subplots in Emily Henry's books as much as I love the romance, so it was taking me out of it just a little bit, and I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't be the focus for too long, and it wasn't. I feel like it was there for the perfect amount of time, and it did add this whole layer to Daphne's character that I feel like was relevant in her relationship with Miles, and I really liked the way the book wrapped up. It kind of had this very realistic ending where it's not like a perfect fairy tale happy ending. It was like, okay, there's gonna be good and bad days, we're gonna have to work on things, but this is life. And I really loved it. Like the closing sentence of the book just was perfect, and I am giving this book 5 stars. It's interesting because it's not the kind of 5 stars where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite book ever, I'm obsessed. But it's the kind of 5 stars where I'm like, there wasn't a single page, line, word, nothing I would change about this book. It was a very like subtle, quiet 5 stars, but I loved it so much nonetheless. This is the first 5-star I've given to an Emily Henry book since People We Meet on Vacation. That book though is like a 6-star read to me, so this one is my new second favorite when it comes to Emily Henry and her books, and I'm so happy happy that I loved it as much as I did. I don't know if you guys have seen that couple that has been kind of trending, like their relationship and how they met and stuff on TikTok. They have this TikTok going around of them playing like that heads up game, but it's with their inside jokes that they have with one another, and it is so cute. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is 100% how I pictured Daphne and Miles. I'll put in a video if I can. They are who I imagined these characters to be. So I really loved them, and I loved this book so much. Emily Henry did it again for me. So to give you guys a little mini wrap up, the first book we read for the video was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I liked this one. I think I'm always gonna like an Elsie Silver book because I love her writing style and it just reads so easily. But I didn't love the characters in this one, both individually and as a couple. I couldn't really understand their dynamic, and individually I feel like they didn't have that many things that were super special about them. I wasn't super invested in any part of the story. There wasn't like a strong plot line, and I do kind of feel like there were just so many tropes in this book that it relied more on the tropes to drive the story along as opposed to like having its own solid plot line or strong characters. But again, it's Elsie Silver. I love everything that she writes, and this was still enjoyable. I gave it 3.75 stars, so not my favorite from her, but it was still good. And then I listened to the audio of Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. I really enjoyed this one. It was so well paced. It was very fast paced. There wasn't a single moment where I wasn't fully invested and immersed in the story. The characters weren't my very favorite. I liked them all, but compared to my two favorite Sally Hepworth books, these characters I don't think I'm gonna think back on that much. I wasn't like super invested in them individually, but overall I did really enjoy this story. I gave it 4 stars. Wasn't my favorite Sally Hepworth book, but definitely not my least favorite. All of her books are great, but I definitely would recommend this one if you're looking for a fast-paced, quick, easy thriller that's gonna keep you on your toes. And then of course you just heard my thoughts on Funny Story, our 5-star of the video. Absolutely loved this book. It's been a while since I've had a 5-star read, so I'm really happy that this ended up being one for me. So with that, I'm gonna close things out. We read some great new releases. I know there's still a few that came out last month that I haven't gotten around to reading yet. I do want to include them in some type of upcoming video, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to like it and comment below if you've read any of the new releases that came out last month and what your thoughts and opinions are on them. And I'll talk to you guys very soon in the next one. Bye guys.